Hi, Matt.
Howdy.
Do you have a presentation for tonight?
I do. Yeah.
Could you email that to me when you have a moment?
Yeah. Do you want me to, are you gonna?
Tomorrow is fine. I
Okay.
just need it for the minutes is all.
Yes. Yes. I will. I'll create a PDF tonight, like right after we're done, and I'll shoot.
It's actually great if it's a PowerPoint.
Oh, you want it to be PowerPoint? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just always send PDFs so that if you like send it to anybody, they can't alter it.
Oh, well,
That's
what I
what.
do is I take your PDF and I put them two to a page, so it takes up
Oh,
less
got it.
paper.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I mean, I take your PowerPoint. I can't do that with a PDF, but I
Got
promise
it.
not to pass it on to anyone.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. No, that's why, like, I don't, if I know it's
Right.
going to get distributed, I'm cautious, extra cautious.
It'll, it'll
But
just,
I will, yeah, I'll send you the PowerPoint.
either way is fine. Don't worry about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. All right, we'll do. And tonight, I assume I'll share it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. No worries.
Good evening, folks.
Good evening. Brent?
Yep.
Did you, were you updated that you need to refer to the amended staff report and not the revised staff report? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Miller's in the meeting.
Hey, Miller.
Chair Bybee,
Yes, ma'am.
did you also receive the email from Mary Hanlon?
Yeah,
Came very
there was
late.
a couple more emails that we got. So I got one. The last comment that I got was from Mary Hanlon.
Okay,
And there were a couple others too. One from Wasco County, and then one from
Mr. and Mrs. Harmon.
right. Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you got them.
Got Linda. We got Alan. We'll wait until we have a quorum to get going. So is that Mark on the phone?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Got Linda, Mark, and Alan. We'll give it another couple minutes, see if any stragglers come in.
Lo que se
Okay, I see Philip there. Okay, and just a reminder, folks, if you're not speaking or talking, make sure to mute yourself if possible. If you're on the phone, try to hold the speaker away from your mouth if you're not speaking. But it's 5:32. It looks like we have a quorum right now, so I'm gonna get underway. So I'm gonna call the meeting to order. We'll start with roll call.
Carly Aparicio. Absent Brent Bybee,
Here.
Cody Cornett,
here.
Ellen Easling,
Here.
Philip Mosher,
Here.
Linda Miller,
Here.
Mark Popoff.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, so are we just missing Carly? Is that it?
Correct.
Okay. Maybe she'll pop in here in a minute. We'll see. Okay, next we'll go to the Pledge of Allegiance, and the flag is up there on Paula's window if y'all want to participate. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. And Carly, you missed out on the Pledge of Allegiance, but you are here now, so we'll mark you as here, Paula. Okay. So next we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Does staff have any edits that they'd like to recommend, or does the commissioners have any edits or motions?
No, Chair.
Okay.
I move we approve the minutes. Excuse me, the agenda.
Okay. It's been moved by Cody. Is there a second?
I'll second Philip.
Okay. Seconded by Philip. All those in favor say aye or raise your right hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. It was unanimous. Looks like everyone voted yes and said yes. Okay, let's move on to approval of the minutes from the April 22nd, 2021 hearing. Are there any edits from commissioners or from staff? Are there any recommendations from staff? I'm not hearing anyone jump up, so would anyone like to make a motion on that?
Miller moves to approve the minutes of April 22nd, 21 as presented.
I second that.
Okay, it was moved by Linda Miller and seconded by Cody Cornett. All those in favor say aye or raise your right hand.
Aye.
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 And it was unanimous again. Okay, so we are through that. We're now into the portion for public comment. This portion of the hearing, for any members of the public that are here, this portion of the hearing is for public comment for anything not in relation to what we are addressing during the hearing tonight. This is for anything else. Please, if you do have anything related to the hearing items tonight, please save that for later. I promise that we'll get to you. But if you do have any comments right now for items that are not in relation to that, now is the time for that. So if you would like to address the commission, please state your name and address for the record, and then feel free to provide comment. And remember to unmute yourself as well. Okay, going once, twice. I hear someone's fax machine and gone. Okay, we'll move on to staff comments, or actually, yeah, staff comments and project updates.
Chair Bybee and members of the commission, good evening. Really glad to be here tonight. I will keep my comments short. There has been some interest expressed by the commission in hearing about the First Street project, which is an urban renewal project, and getting an update on that. We did have a very good presentation at the Tuesday night's meeting of the Urban Renewal Board. So I think we can do a repeat show. I'll be the main event, as opposed to, I may not bring my consultants on to make the presentation, but I can. And I look forward to hearing your comments. We'll likely do that in June. We'll schedule that sometime in June or July. I also heard some interest in having an open discussion about maybe looking at some industrial code amendments to some of our industrial development standards, and that might be something we'd want to discuss at a future meeting as well. And then I know Commissioner Aparicio a few weeks ago had brought up, and I haven't forgotten, the issue of having a legislative update. And so as our legislature winds down its session at the end of June, we will be able to have some good compiled information from likely the League of Oregon Cities that we can use to give you an update on where things are, particularly in the area of housing. As we expect, there will be more legislation that we will all need to comply with. So with that, we also have some other code amendments coming up, and I have mentioned it in past, some transitional housing code amendments, and you'll likely hear about that more in June as well. So with that, I'm finished, Chair, unless others have questions.
All right, thank you. Do the commissioners have any questions for staff at all?
I do, if I could start.
Okay.
So good evening, everyone. This is indirectly related to the work we've been doing the last few months. I noticed in the survey we asked about container housing and small and tiny house. I know that we asked for that agenda item to be removed from this update of code. And I was just curious when we will add that back to the agenda, if we're really going to continue to focus on affordable housing options. And then 2, I'm assuming, although our work with the consultancy group is going to end soon with the grant, that we'll still have access to that information that we receive from the community.
Commissioner Aparicio, thank you. We will have access to all the reports and all of the feedback. We'll have a summary report of all the feedback we've received from the community through the online open house and the survey that we have underway. So that's great. As far as coming up with a list of some priorities for code amendments, I think it'll be a good time, and it'll be my first year with you as your director, to have a work session where we talk about priorities, about what your work plan priorities might be for the year, and how those, we want to make sure those marry up with City Council's priorities as well. But in any event, we can talk about code amendments that you might want to have us take a look at, as well as we can give you some that, as we do all the time, we identify code amendments that might streamline or make our code more friendly and user friendly. So in any event, how about we'll schedule a time. We try not to have a meeting. I forgot to mention this earlier. We try not to have a meeting in August. We take a month off. So sometime it'll either be in June, July, or September. Someplace in there we'll set some priorities. Does that seem okay for everybody? Sooner better. That's what I'm hearing. Did I get that right? Okay, very good.
Alice, just to add to that, I just think that we've received feedback as part of this process that container housing seems to be a priority for at least one of the public comments that we received. So I just want to make sure that that doesn't fall off our radar.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And is that, if I may add to that, could you please remind me, what's the status of tiny homes? Do we allow tiny homes currently, or do they fall under the same kind of not looked at close enough category as container homes?
Chair and Commissioner Mosher, we did not, we decided to put that on the table, to table that discussion for now and saved it for another time. And that would be a good time to take both container homes and the tiny homes all at once, and at least talk about them and set some priorities around when we want to talk about those, and if we want to talk about those. I assume so. Some more, get some more information and see if that's something we'd like to introduce here in the Dalles.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Because currently neither one of them are permitted. Is that correct?
I'm going to look to Dawn to help me answer that.
So, hello. The container homes are not currently allowed because they are prohibited and to be used in any zone other than an industrial or light industrial, and typically it's like an accessory structure type use. The tiny homes, we follow Oregon State building codes in terms of the manufacturing of those tiny homes. If they come in on wheels, we would then be required to follow our manufactured home guidelines, which, as you may or may not be completely aware, we do require in certain zones that it be a double wide or wider. So, and then we do have minimum sizes that would not be typical of a tiny home, which usually is under 400 square feet. So right now, then, to kind of answer the question, that's really not available. So we do want to really take a look at that in a future amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, were there any other questions or comments from the commissioners? I'm not hearing any, so let's move on. Okay, now we're going to move into the legislative portion of the hearing. Let me get to something real quick. Now is time for the specified. Now is the time specified for the Planning Commission to conduct the public hearing to consider the following matter. Application number ZOA 104-21 and CPA 49-21 by the City of the Dalles. This application is a request to amend the Dalles Municipal Code, Title 10, Land Use and Development, and the Comprehensive Plan. The purpose is to meet minimum compliance standards for duplexes, adopting Oregon House Bill 2001 requirements, middle housing code amendments for triplex, quadplex, and townhomes, and development code cleanup amendments. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 health crisis, the city's public hearing procedures for tonight's quasi-judicial hearing have been amended. On March 8th, 2020, the governor declared a state of emergency for the entire state of Oregon due to the COVID-19 pandemic. On March 20th, 2020, the city of the Dalles issued its own declaration of emergency due to COVID-19. On April 15th, 2020, the governor issued executive order number 20-16 titled Keep Government Working, ordering necessary measures to ensure safe public meetings and continued operations by local governments during coronavirus outbreak. Pursuant to Section 2A of the governor's order, public bodies must hold public hearings through an electronic means whenever possible. Also pursuant to Section 2A of the governor's order, the public body must make available a method by which the public can listen to or virtually attend the public hearing at the time it occurs. Regarding public testimony, 2C of the governor's order states, any requirements that testimony during a public hearing be taken in person do not apply if the public body provides an opportunity for submission of testimony by electronic or virtual means, or provides a means of submitting written testimony, including by email or other electronic methods, that the public body may consider in a timely manner. The governor's order is to remain in effect so long as Oregon's state of emergency is in effect. As of the date of this public hearing, Oregon's state of emergency remains in effect. Consistent with the governor's keep working order, the city has implemented the following procedures for tonight's public hearing. This meeting is available for public viewing through a live stream that is posted to the city's website. The land use application and all related documents, as well as the applicable criteria, were posted to the city's website for public viewing. Consistent with the governor's order, written testimony and comments regarding this application were required to be mailed to the planning department no later than May 20th, 2021 at 5 p.m. Testimony received, if any, was timely posted to the city's website for public viewing. As required by the governor's order, all testimony received was transmitted to the planning commissioners so that the testimony could be considered by the planning commissioners in a timely manner. The remaining hearing procedures are procedures that generally apply in all public hearings. The substantive criteria upon which the Planning Commission will base its decision in this matter are contained in the city's comprehensive plan and land use and development ordinance. Participants in tonight's public hearing must be recognized by the chair in order to speak. Public testimony is limited to 5 minutes. When recognized by the chair, please state your name and mailing address for the record. This public hearing is being recorded as well as live streamed. Generally, the public hearing procedure is as follows. Prior to the public hearing, a determination will be made of the qualifications of the commission members. I will open up the public hearing with a staff report. The purpose of the staff report at this point is to further identify the applicable criteria of the case being considered and to provide background information about the case. If whoever's on the call, if you could mute yourself, please. Thank you. Okay, after the staff report, we will hear testimony from the applicants who are attending this meeting via Zoom. The applicants will have an opportunity to present testimony in favor of the land use application, address issues raised in the staff report, and respond to any testimony received opposing the land use application. To expedite the hearing, the commission members may ask questions of persons as they testify. When this process has been concluded, we will close the public hearing or public testimony portion of the hearing. During the hearing, some important standards apply. First, those who testify must hold their testimony to the decision criteria. Second, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission members and the parties an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Third, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to the proposed conditions of approval with details specific enough to allow the city to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Fourth, prior to the conclusion of the public hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. If such a request is made, the commission must grant the request by either continuing the hearing to a time and date at least 7 days from the date of the initial hearing, or the record must be kept open for a period of at least 7 days. Do the commissioners, staff, or applicants have any questions? Okay. Have any members of the commission had any ex parte contacts, conflicts of interest, or bias which would not allow them to render an impartial decision on this matter?
Miller, no.
Okay.
Cody, no.
I'm not hearing anyone speak up with a yes.
No.
Okay. Does anyone participating in tonight's hearing wish to challenge the qualifications of any members of the commission? And if you do, please remember to unmute yourself. Okay. I'm going to move into.
Excuse me.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yes, I have a question. I'd
Yep.
like to,
Who you are.
oh, I'm sorry. This is Josette Schultens. I'd like to know how many people on this commission are realtors.
Excuse me, Chair Bybee.
Yeah.
Before you answer that, I need her address.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Can you please state your full name and address for the record?
Sure, it's Josette Schultens, 2637 East 10th Street, the
Okay.
Dallas.
And then I'll let the commissioners address that.
There's two others.
Two of you?
So it looks like Philip and Cody, correct?
Yep. I'm Cody. I'm a realtor for Copper West Real Estate.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, were there any, so to be specific, is there anyone participating in tonight's hearing that wishes to challenge the qualifications of any members of the commission? And I'm not hearing anyone, so we will move into the hearing now. The public hearing is now open. May we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair Bybee and Commissioners. As Chair Bybee mentioned, this is application for zoning ordinance amendment 104-21 and comprehensive plan amendment 49-21. Provided in the staff report, I did provide a background of the other housing code amendments that we've been working through over the last few years, just as reference. And then I also provided a narrative of the batches that we have been working on through our work sessions over the last few months. The attached memo that's dated April 29th from Angelo Planning Group, which is our consultant, combined all those three batches and the information included in those in the decisions and discussions that we had as Planning Commission and staff. Matt Hasty is here today. He'll be presenting here going through that memo and basically going through some of the findings after I finish here. So just got a couple more things I want to talk about. Our group amendments, as you may remember, we did conclude 4 work sessions of the Planning Commission. And then we also provided 2 virtual open houses. And those virtual houses or virtual open houses, we will be getting some additional information from Matt and or Brandon at the end of our presentation today. The applications that we're reviewing tonight are considered legislative actions. That is why Chair Bybee had such a long preamble to the public hearing. It is follows under section 10.3.110.020 for review procedures, as well as amendments to our comprehensive plan, which is under section 10.3.020.060. In terms of comments, we did receive one via mail that was included in the staff report from a Richard and Laura Hess. And we also received, you were emailed three comments. One was from Angie Brewer, who is the director of Wasco County Planning, Mr. and Mrs. Jack Harmon, as well as Mary Hanlon. That one was emailed to you all tonight. The other phone calls and inquiries that we've had, I did include kind of a little bit of a narrative as to the volume of calls that we received. As you may remember in the staff report, we did do a Measure 56 notification to over 6,800 residential properties within our community. That generated quite a few phone calls in. Most of the phone calls that we received or the planners had answered were questions specifically asking, are you going to require me to build a duplex? And that was, I think that was a little bit of a misunderstanding. And once, they talked to one of the three planners, four, so Alice also talked to a few, they found that that was not a requirement, that this was opening up that as an opportunity. We did have a couple people email and or call asking specific development questions, feeling that ballot measure notification was dealing with a specific development that would be happening in their neighborhood. So they did find that that was not what it was, and that we were looking at code amendments. We had a former realtor, I think former realtor, had actually called and asked about us reviewing and taking a look at adding manufactured dwelling parks in other residential zones. So currently they're only allowed in our residential medium density. So I did let him know that, and I believe he is here tonight. So hopefully we'll get some comments. His comments back to me were basically, let's take a look. Maybe we can take a look at that as a future amendment for the Planning Commission to look at making that code amendment in the chain or in the code. We did also receive just some emails back and forth from Jean Dahlquist of Fair Housing Council of Oregon, and they actually were very complimentary of the work that you have been working through, and said that they emphasized that our goal 10s and our comp plan, that those were looking good, and that they said to congratulate you on the code that you're looking to make a change to tonight, and thanks for all your hard work. And then the final comment that I did receive, well, it wasn't a comment, it was an inquiry from Alexis Biddle of 1,000 Friends of Oregon. And Alexis hopefully will be here tonight, and he can, if he has any comments or questions, we can hear from him tonight. Sorry, that was a little lengthy. So rather than go through all of the findings, what I'm going to do is pass the baton on to Mr. Matt Hasty to do his presentation. And then at the end, we'll take a look at staff's recommendation, which is that we are recommending the Planning Commission approve both the zoning ordinance amendment and the comprehensive plan amendment with the amended staff report findings. So I will go ahead and pass it on to Matt.
All right, thanks, Dawn. And so I'll take you through a presentation, a PowerPoint. We've kept it reasonably brief, I think about 14 slides. And so I'm going to share my screen and start walking through that. Hold on one sec. There we go. All right, can everybody see that? Awesome. Okay, I had too many things open. It took me a while to find the right one. So I'll give just a quick recap on House Bill 2001. And then as Dawn and I think Brent mentioned, there's sort of three sets of code amendments we're looking at tonight. One are related specifically to duplexes and their amendments to ensure that the city is consistent or in compliance with House Bill 2001 and the Oregon administrative rules that were adopted to implement that House bill. But the city also wanted to go a little bit beyond that and take a look at some potential amendments to its code related to other forms of middle housing. You're not required to do that, but you've been doing that over the last several years. And so we took a look at some pretty targeted or selected amendments related to triplexes and quadplexes and townhomes. So we'll talk about those. And then also, there are a number of code amendments that we classified as kind of cleanup amendments. These are things in your code that have been kind of issues for both staff in terms of administering the code, but also for property owners and builders who would like to do something, but some of these things represent barriers to the ability to do that. So we'll talk about those as well. As Dawn mentioned, we did a couple of virtual open houses and surveys as part of this process. We just kind of halfway finished one of them. And so we've got some results to report on that. So we'll do that sort of towards the end of the presentation, and then we'll move into the rest of the public hearing. We won't quite adjourn quite next on that. So I will just start rolling through, and I assume we'll hold questions until the end or the kind of the right point in the hearing for that. All right, so just kind of a quick recap on House Bill 2001. It was passed during the 2019 legislative session, and the basic intent was to expand housing options in Oregon cities, not all cities, but cities over 10,000. And there are some specific requirements for cities that are between 10,000 and 25,000 people population. So those apply to the DAOs, and those are focused primarily on duplexes. Those are classified as medium-sized cities. And then large cities, which are more than 25,000 people, or all cities in the Portland metro area over 1,000 in population. So that's all but one city in the Portland metro area. Have the same requirements associated with duplexes that medium cities like the Dallas do, but they are also required to allow triplexes, quadplexes, or fourplexes, townhomes, and what is called cottage cluster housing in areas that are zoned for single family residential development. So you don't need to meet all those requirements, but we are doing some things as part of this that will kind of expand some opportunities related to that. So the city received a grant from the State Department of Land Conservation and Development to do this work, and hired our firm, Angelo Planning Group, and then also Cascadia Partners to assist. And you'll see some graphics in this presentation tonight, and you saw them in earlier meetings that were produced by Cascadia to help illustrate kind of what some of these potential code amendments look like. In terms of kind of the timeline for the work, we're kind of closing on the deadline. So we need to complete our work by June 15th, few weeks from now. And the amendments must be adopted by June 30th, 2021. That's part of the requirements of the House bill and the administrative rules. So we've been working on this since about last September. As Don and Chair Bybee said, we had several meetings with you, the Planning Commission, as well as some additional kind of adjunct advisory committee members to the Planning Commission, worked through a number of recommendations and options as part of those meetings, and then brought kind of a final set of draft recommendations to you last month. And we're here to review those and potentially pass those on to the City Council for their adoption. We had an early virtual open house and survey back in December, January timeframe, and then a second one, which we just recently completed. So I'm going to talk about now these code amendments and comprehensive plan amendments. There's a few amendments proposed to your comprehensive plan. And these are, I'll say, pretty brief or modest amendments, just to, again, ensure consistency with the House bill and with the administrative rules. And so these are basically updating some policies. Your comprehensive plan has policies and then measures. And so there's an amendment to one of the policies that just acknowledges House Bill Bill 2001, and that duplexes do need to be allowed on every lot where a single family detached dwelling is also allowed. And then there's a couple of changes to measures. One, adding a measure related to duplexes that relates to residential densities, and another that you have some provisions for small lot single family housing in your code that actually we're proposing to eliminate. So we need to eliminate that measure in the comp plan so there's no confusion or inconsistency there. So these are in one of the documents that you got as part of your hearing packet, the comp plan amendments. So in terms of duplex amendments, I'll kind of walk through these and I'll talk about sort of what's the requirement from the state, and then how are we meeting that requirement through the proposed code amendments. So the first one is simply that duplexes need to be allowed on any lot where a single family detached home is allowed. Your code already basically allows that, but it does in a couple of your zones have different lot size requirements for duplexes versus single family detached homes. In your low density RL zone, it's the same. So there was no change needed to be made there, but it differed in the high density and the medium density residential zones. So the recommendation is for the high density residential zone, for the minimum lot size for a single family detached home or a duplex, both units to be 2,500 square feet, and in the medium density residential zone for the minimum lot size to be 4,000 square feet. So that would be 2,000 square feet per unit for a duplex in the RM zone, and 1,250 per unit in the high density zone, right? Yeah. So that's one requirement that would ensure that you're allowing duplexes and single family detached homes on on the same lots in all of those zones. There's also a requirement that you may not require more than 2 spaces of off-street parking for duplexes. If someone wants to provide more than 2 spaces, they can. So you're not prohibiting them from a developer or builder from providing more than 2 spaces, but you can't require more spaces than that. And so the recommendation is to amend your code to do just that, to reduce the required parking for duplexes to 2 spaces in total, or 1 space per unit. Another provision of the administrative rules and the House bill is that in terms of kind of the design of duplexes, you need to treat them in the same way that you treat single family detached homes. And so for the most part, your code already does that. There weren't really very many ways in which your standards differed for those 2 types of housing. But there were a few places where primarily you had sort of exceptions to certain things for single family detached homes. You didn't have the same exceptions to duplexes. The other thing is that any standards you do apply to duplexes, really to all housing, need to be what are called clear and objective standards. So there's a number of changes proposed that would address this particular requirement. One is to allow the same temporary family hardship provision for duplexes that you allow for single family detached homes. Another is to eliminate one of your design standards that talks about duplexes having the appearance of a single house, which is not really a clear and objective standard. It's a subjective standard. And to have a traditional front entry, that's also not a clear and objective standard. It's a subjective standard. So really just kind of eliminating some of those terms that are not clear and objective. And then a couple other things that are allowed for single family detached homes that we're adding for duplexes, waiver of remonstrance and landscaping prior to occupancy exemptions. Those currently apply to single family detached homes. They would also apply to duplexes under the proposed code amendments. One of the things that the House bill requires and the administrative rules is that duplexes not be subject to maximum density requirements. So you need to update your code to include a provision that says that. And that also that people are allowed to convert a single family detached home to a duplex. So we added a new code section and some provisions that allow for that under certain conditions. one of the conditions is that you can do that, but you can't increase if there's some aspects of the single family detached home that don't conform with your code, you can't make those more non-conforming or more out of conformance through the conversion, but this would allow for that conversion. And then there were a couple other updates to your code that aren't explicitly required by those administrative rules, but that are allowed, and that we had a decent bit of discussion about among you all. So one of your options is to allow duplexes to either be 2 attached units or 2 detached units. In either case, they're on the same lot, the same parcel or piece of property. So ultimately the recommendation from the group was to allow for both attached and detached duplexes. And so we would update, the amendments would update the definition of duplex in the code to specify that. So that's one. 2, currently you have some provisions that require that both units would have front entries. We said, you know, if you've got a duplex where one of the units is behind the other, it doesn't make sense necessarily to have both the entries in the front. So we've got a proposed amendment that would allow either 2 front entries if they're side by side, but it would also allow a side entry to one of the units if one of the units is behind the other unit. So, and these graphics kind of illustrate both of those amendments. So those are all of the things I just talked about are all the amendments related to duplexes. So I think, you know, when we started this project, we did an audit of your code, and really in most ways you were already complying with the state legislation, but there were some targeted amendments to your code to make sure you are in compliance, and in a couple places, just make it a little, provide some more flexibility, particularly the attached versus detached as a way to provide more flexibility for that form of housing. So we also looked at some potential changes to your code related to triplexes, quadplexes, and townhomes. So I'll talk about those in this slide and I think the next one or two. And primarily what we looked at here were some changes in minimum lot size, minimum lot width, depth, and maximum height for these, for those types of structures. And the idea here was to be partly just to be consistent in terms of how you treat the amount of space required for a given type of housing unit per unit, and also to address kind of potentially the bulk of some of these units as it relates to the height of the unit. So I'll talk about that in a second. So the recommendation here is for in your RH or high density zone to update the minimum lot size so that it's 1,500 square feet per dwelling unit for either triplexes or quadplexes in that zone. The minimum lot width would be reduced to 50 feet and the minimum lot depth would be 60 feet. Most of your lots are deeper than 60 feet, but that would give you some flexibility in terms of the size of the lot. You'd need a little more than 50 by 60 to meet that lot size standard, but it just provides some more flexibility in terms of the configuration of the lot. And recognizing that this can result in some kind of bulkier or more massive buildings, we also recommended reducing the maximum height for triplexes and quadplexes in the RH zone and in the RM zone, reducing it from 45 feet to 35 feet in that zone. In the medium density residential zone, the RM zone, the recommendation is to reduce the minimum lot size to 2,000 square feet per unit, and same changes to minimum lot width, depth, and height as I just talked about in the RH zone. So this is kind of putting duplexes on kind of the same par, or duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes kind of on the same par as some of the other types of housing units allowed in these same zones in terms of the size of lot per unit that you would need. So that's really kind of what we're trying to do here. We also looked, oh, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Matt, I wanted to go ahead and make a comment that the public and obviously the commissioners have seen some of these photos before, but these photos do represent housing stock that's currently in the Dalles. So
Just thought
Yes.
that's a good point to show up. Thanks,
Yes,
Matt.
thank you.
Sorry.
Anybody who's seeing this on their screen and seeing the homes, we didn't go grab pictures from Portland or Eugene or wherever. These are all photos of houses or houses or types of housing units in the Dalles. Yes, thank you, Don. All right. So we also talked during this process about parking and about potential changes to the number of off-street parking spaces required for triplexes, quadplexes, and townhomes. We talked about and looked at a number of options. And ultimately, the recommendation was to reduce the number of spaces required. Again, this doesn't mean that somebody couldn't provide more parking than this, but it would reduce the number required to be built to essentially 1 space per unit for each of these types of housing. Townhomes, 1 space per unit, triplexes, 3 spaces total, so 1 space per unit, quadplex, 4 spaces total, or 1 space per unit. And really, again, this was about kind of using land more efficiently, reducing the cost of development of these forms of housing, and providing some more flexibility in terms of the ability to locate the parking on the lot, given lot sizes in the Dalles and what we're requiring in terms of minimum lot widths. So that was the rationale there, and that's the recommendation. Another recommended amendment to the code is to treat triplexes and quadplexes similar to single family detached homes and duplexes in terms of landscaping requirements. So essentially to provide this, to apply the same types of landscaping standards to those homes as you do for currently do for single family detached homes and duplexes, because they're really more alike than, let's say, a multifamily development or an apartment building. Duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes tend to be a little more like a single family detached home or a duplex in terms of how landscaping is done or provided. So that's another recommendation related to these types of housing. So that's it. Again, pretty targeted on the triplexes, quadplexes, and townhomes. And now I'll talk a little bit about these code cleanup amendments. So again, these are really kind of generally here to make sure that we address some things that have been issues for staff to administer or applicants to come in and try to do some things and face some barriers. So one is just to add some definitions to your code where there weren't definitions or where definitions needed to be clarified. So you'll see some terms on the screen there: gross density, porch. Kind of some of this gets at that clear and objective standards piece. 2, updating the residential density ranges in the code to be consistent with your comprehensive plan. There was some kind of incompatibility there. 3, being kind of clear and consistent in terms of the types of review processes that you apply to different types of housing. So single family homes, duplexes, townhomes, and other plexes would be required or would be subject to what's called ministerial review. So that's essentially staff review. And then multifamily subject to site plan review. So that's a somewhat higher level of review and requirement in terms of the type of information that has to be provided as part of the review process. And then another kind of cleanup thing was where we're talking about a housing structure in your code, instead of using the word building, use the words dwelling units to be more clear and accurate with those standards. Right now, your code has some architectural design features list, sort of a menu approach in the RL and RH zones, but it wasn't in the RM zone. It really should be to be consistent. So we're adding that same menu there. And then exempting detached duplexes from the multiple buildings on one lot design standards, because those standards are really primarily oriented to like accessory structures. They don't make as much sense when we're talking about 2 detached units that would be on the same lot that are both that are housing units. Another one in kind of the cleanup category would be to reduce the required setback for an accessory dwelling unit from an alley. So right now, if someone has a garage, let's say, and they want to convert that into an accessory dwelling unit, often the garage will be built right up to the alley, the edge of the alley, and they'll have to move it or lop off 5 feet or do something like that if they want to create an accessory dwelling unit. And so the recommendation is to allow that accessory dwelling unit to be kind of up against the alley. If the alley isn't a full 20 feet wide, then it would have to be set back 10 feet from the center line of the alley, just to make sure you've got enough space to get through there for a vehicle. So that's another code cleanup amendment. And then this last one, this is one where there's going to be a little bit of a difference between what we talked about at our last meeting as a recommendation and what the current recommendation is. So I'm going to try to talk about this, and I'm going to see if afterwards, if Don or Alice have anything to add. So right now in your CBC zone, which is kind of your downtown and areas that surround the downtown, you've got a district, and then you've got several sub-districts. And the map here is showing the sub-districts. The hatched area on the map is sub-district 2. The green area is sub-district 3, and the kind of unhatched blue area is sub-district 1. Currently, you have limitations on allowing for dwellings in those areas, even though particularly in sub-districts 1 and 3, you have historically had dwellings or homes built in those areas. But now if somebody wants to just have purely a residential unit, it's difficult for them to do that in any of these sub-districts. So the proposed amendment here is in sub-districts 1 and 3, which are kind of those areas, again, around the main part of your downtown, to allow dwellings in those areas. Regardless of what's on the ground floor, you can have dwelling units on a property in those areas. And in sub-district 2, to allow dwellings, but require that the ground floor be a commercial use. So in the last Planning Commission meeting, we talked about allowing dwellings in all of these sub-districts and not requiring the commercial use on the ground floor. There was some more discussion since that time with staff, including planning or community development staff and the city manager. And I think ultimately this seems like a bigger policy issue than maybe we want to tackle at this time, to simply allow dwellings on any parcel in kind of your core downtown area. And so staff has kind of backed off on that recommendation a little bit from what we talked about last time, to recommend dwellings anywhere in those sub-districts 1 and 3, but to retain the ground floor commercial requirement in sub-district 2. So I think this is my last thing to talk about before we get to the open house stuff. But Don or Alice do you have anything to add to this?
Yes, yes, I would. Thank you, Chair, and Matt, thanks for the presentation. I do want to just say that it was with I guess some regret that we removed this recommendation that you made as a commission from the list. We did it only because we felt like we needed some more community vetting. It was a good recommendation, a really good, thoughtful discussion at the part of the Planning Commission, but we really need to get more property owners involved and just get some more eyes on it before we send it off to City Council. And it seems like a big group of amendments to sort of slip in without more vetting and more time. So with that, I'll add it to the list of things that we can talk about soon as a priority list of perhaps code amendments that you might be wanting us to make in the future.
All right, thank you, Alice. Okay, the last thing I'm going to talk about here is the virtual open house that we just had. And we actually, so I said we finished it. There's actually a Spanish language version that's still open. But we closed the English language version because we had it open for, I think about 2.5 weeks. And we wanted to close at least that before we talk to you tonight. But we also wanted to leave a little more time for the Spanish language version to be up and available. So it's still going, but the English language version's closed. So we closed that just, I think, in the last day or two. So these results are sort of hot off the presses. So I'll walk through these real briefly. and kind of let you know what people had to say. We gave people information about what we've been talking about, what we've been talking about tonight and over the last several months. And then we asked them a number of questions related to some of the specific recommendations that we are talking about tonight. We had quite a few people take a look at the open house, and then a smaller number, let's say, answer the questions. I can never tell people exactly what that means. I often think, well, if they didn't respond to the survey, they probably think what they saw sounds good, but who knows? So we had 462 people visit the open house. And then we had somewhere between 30 and 40 people respond to the different questions that we asked. So people will often ask me, is that sort of a scientifically valid survey? I would say no. Really very few surveys are, but it's kind of what we got. And I was happy to see the number of people that did the survey. So in terms of the questions and responses, we have we'll get you detailed results of the survey as well. And we have a draft, kind of a quick summary that I think we sent over to staff. And if it hasn't been forwarded to you, we'll get that to you. But kind of quick results. We asked people about allowing detached duplexes in addition to attached duplexes. Did they think that was a good idea? And most of them said, yes, that's a good idea. 82% agreed or strongly agreed with that recommendation. We asked people about the changes to lot sizes for duplexes and single family detached homes. We had 54% say yes, they agreed or strongly agreed. I can't remember what the percent was that were on the fence, because we did give people the ability to be neutral. I think it was probably in the order of 15 to 20%, and then the others disagreed or strongly disagreed. We asked people about the proposed changes in lot sizes and lot widths for triplexes and quadplexes. And 73% said yes, they agreed or strongly agreed with those recommendations. It's not on this slide, and I don't know that it's on the next one, but we did also ask people about the reductions in off-street parking requirements. I think in virtually every case, we had more people strongly agree than strongly disagree. And the combined number of people who responded, who agreed and strongly agreed, was always more than the percent that strongly disagreed and disagreed. And then we always had a certain percent in the middle. Sometimes the middle percentage, we don't care, or no preference was smaller, and sometimes it was a little larger. And then we talked at the very start of this about, we had talked about potential changes to your code related to tiny homes and container homes. Ultimately, we decided that was a bigger issue and topic than we wanted to try to tackle in this process. But we did ask people, do you think that's something that the city should pursue at a later date? And about 2/3 of them said yes, they think the city should take a look at that at a later date. Of the respondents, we had 2/3 say they would support or strongly support that. So I think that's my last slide. I'm going to look. Oh, no, we do have some more. We do have parking here. Sorry about that. So again, we asked people about off-street parking requirements for triplexes and quadplexes. We also showed them some of the options that we looked at with you all earlier in the process. In terms of the recommendation, 61% agreed or strongly agreed that we should be reducing the number of parking spaces required for those types of homes. And then we asked people which option they liked the best. The option that got the highest percentage number of votes was the one that we're proposing. And then second was the one that was like slightly less parking. And the third was the one that was still required more, or I guess the most. And then for townhomes, we asked about that specifically. So we had 47%, again, strongly agree or agree with reducing the number required for townhomes, and 43% disagree, and about 10% neutral. I think that was sort of the smallest neutral we had in there. That, I think, was my last slide. Oh, except for next steps, but that's kind of, so next step really, I mean, and I think you'll talk about this in the next part of the hearing, but is potentially to forward a recommendation to council. And then the first council hearing on this would be June 14th. And if needed, a second council hearing on June 28th. So that's all I have. Happy to answer questions when we get to that point. And I will stop sharing my screen, but if people want me to show something later, I can bring it back up.
Okay, yeah, and I think we'll hold off on, thank you, Matt. Sorry. I think we'll hold off on questions. I want to afford an opportunity for the applicants to testify. Would staff qualify as the applicants, Alice? Is that what I'm gathering?
Yes, Chair. And I want to just ask Dawn Hurt if she had any final closing comments before we turn it over to back to you, Chair.
Okay, and I promise if any folks are wanting to provide comments or testimony, I promise we're going to get there. We just have a little bit further to go. So take it away, Dawn.
Okay, so as I stated earlier, all of these changes that we're recommending both to as well as the comprehensive plan, that staff believes that we are in compliance with our goals, as well as we are recommending the commission move to city council 10421 adopting the adopting the code attached herein, which is the report, and adopting findings that are included in this amended staff report with any additional changes that would be made by you, the commission, at today's meeting.
Okay, I think I gathered most of that. You broke up a little bit there, Dawn, but essentially supporting what you stated earlier, the recommendation for approval to City Council, correct? And she's gone again.
I think that concludes the presentation, Chair. And with
Okay.
That is correct.
Oh, there she is. Okay, got it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, sounds like that concludes staff's presentation. We did get 3 comments. I am going to read those since we just received them today. Have the commissioners had a chance to review those materials that were sent, the extra comments that were sent today? If anyone hasn't.
Miller
please-
never received anything.
Okay, so I'm going to read those so you'll be able to hear them as well. That way we can read them into the record as well. And Paula, if you could make sure to forward those comments to Linda as well when you have the opportunity.
Chair Bybee, they were sent via email.
Oh, sent via email. Okay. Did you get them in your email, Linda?
No.
Okay.
I'll send them again.
Okay. Paula will
Thank
resend them again. I'm going to read them right now, though, so we can get that covered. Let me find them. Sorry, folks. Just be 1 second. Okay. So I'll start with this one's from Mary Hanlon that was sent today. It states, the Dalles has a severe housing crisis. If thoughtfully planned, growth in available housing provides an opportunity for a community to create a healthy, thriving environment that reflects its values and sustains its citizens. Addressing growth by ignoring existing conditions or blocking initiatives that support thoughtful growth can lead to a patchwork of substandard housing and poor quality commercial properties. This acts to perpetuate a cycle of limited investment in the town's infrastructure. Alternatively, it may be by necessity push a community toward investors without local ties who change the character of the town. Communities that constructively embrace the element of desirability and growth as and when it occurs, as it has in the Dalles, can lead the effort to reinforce that which gives the town its defining characteristics. This permits the local community to influence and control the character of that growth and the overall health of the community. Providing an adequate supply of quality housing is critical to the health of a small community. It is the cornerstone to stability. The ability of housing allows schools and employers to attract and retain families and employees. Good jobs increase wages and support the tax base of the community. This creates opportunities for young people to find employment in their hometown and remain close to family members. And all of these factors working together create the foundation for the social and economic well-being of the community. In addition to larger apartment projects, a well-conceived plan permitting an increase in housing inventory creates an opportunity for homeowners to add a small number of units to their property. This addresses the housing crisis on a one-to-one basis. Families can increase their household income by adding a unit. Renters can have more personal relationships with their landlords, and the increased supply of housing creates a vibrant community. Adding middle-income housing frees up units for all income levels. Supporting and encouraging more housing in the Dalles is good for all concerned. The local tax base increases with the new growth, which supports the financing of additional housing. An increase in housing supply is essential at this time. To remain viable, the town should create incentives rather than barriers to the development of new units for the residents of the Dalles. Mary Hanlon Development. So that one was sent today, and there's another 2 that were sent. I'm going to get to those right now. Let's see. Okay, the next one I'm going to read is from Mr. and Mrs. Jack Harmon. So they state, to Don Hurt, I received the flyer in regards to the hearings of an adoption of an ordinance amending its housing code. My husband and I live on East 11th Street along with 7 other single-family homes. East 11th Street is a dead-end street that is entered off Morton. My concern is with the lot we own next to our home, if we should decide to sell to our son for a future residence. This is an 80-foot lot with all the utilities we paid to serve this property some 25 years ago at the time we did for our home. This lot is not large enough for multiple dwelling, nor does it fit in with the other single-family homes on this street. I need to clearly understand that any adoption of the housing code will not affect my lot other than for a single-family dwelling. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Jack Harmon. And that was received on
Chair Bybee?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
So that I just wanted to give a response to the planning commission when be allowing or opening up opportunities for added development. However, that lot that the Harmons own is 88 by 85 feet, which they could build a single family home on that parcel and meet minimum density requirements.
Okay. So it sounds like their concerns are getting addressed. Okay. And sorry, Dawn, if you're responding, you're still breaking up a little bit. Okay, tell your kids to get off the Wi-Fi.
Sorry. Well, yeah, or the microwave, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. We'll go on to the next comment. Oh, sorry. That last comment from the Harmons was received on May 9th, it looks like. Okay, and the next comment was on May 19th, 2021. It was to the City of the Dalles Community Development Department from Angie Brewer, the Planning Director with Wasco County Planning. She says, Dear the Dalles Planning Commission City Council, the Wasco County Planning Department has received notice related to proposed updates to the City of the Dalles Municipal Code and Comprehensive Plan that impact properties within the urban growth area. ZOA 104-21 and CPA 49-21. Our joint management agreement, the Wasco County Planning Department has reviewed the proposed amendments and is submitting the following comments to the record. Wasco County Planning is in support of these amendments as they make the Dallas Municipal Code and Comprehensive Plan consistent with changes to state law resulting from 2019 House Bill 2001. Considering our unique constraints and the recently adopted National Scenic Area, Urban Area Boundary Expansion caps, Wasco County Planning encourages the city to continue pursuing density infill as a viable strategy for growth. Sincerely, Angie Brewer. Okay. And those are the comments that we've received thus far. Were there any other, staff?
We
Okay.
have not received any additional other than just basic comments and or inquiries, correct?
Okay. Okay, and Paula is going to get those sent over to Linda so that she can see those. Okay, now we're going to move into the portion for public comment and testimony. As I stated earlier in the procedures for the hearing, folks are going to be limited to 5 minutes. I'm sorry, I want to be able to hear everyone's concerns, but we also have to consider time as well in case there are a large number of comments. I'm going to let folks unmute themselves and make themselves known so that they can provide comment. When you do, please remember to state your full name and address for the record so that we can get that in the record. So I will open it up to folks. Who would like to go first? I know there's someone that wants to speak up.
Nate
Remember to unmute yourself.
Nate has his virtual hand up.
Oh, he does? Oh, wow. So progressive. Okay. Let's go to Nate Stice.
Who practiced in Zoom. Chair Bybee, members of the Planning Commission, I'm Nate Stice. I'm at 1010 G Street in Dallas, Oregon. Very proud to call this town my home, and am thankful for all of your work and service on the Planning Commission and the work of the staff in updating this very important code. I very much appreciate Mary Hanlon's comments, and I just want to underline her commentary on sort of the need for housing for the health and prosperity of every part of our community, and also underline that we have an extreme housing crisis. And I've often in this commission come and talked about where we're at in the housing market, and I think it's very important to understand how far gone it is. And I'm gonna point to a couple numbers for shock value, and I think we've all seen rents increase precipitously, and I've been pulling together a quarterly housing market report for Wasco County, which is not very scientific, but just going on and looking at rentals and getting sales prices from realtors. And I'll just give you a few numbers. So as of April, I went online to look at housing and was shocked to see that there was a 1-bedroom rental in the Dalles that posted for $1,500, over $1,500. The median sales price for a home in Wasco County in Q1 of 2021 was $322,500. That was up from $250 in Q1 of 2020. That's a 29% increase. And when we start to talk about these prices, we start to talk about pricing out many, many members of our community, including nurses and doctors and baristas and all of our neighbors. And I think I didn't have really good remarks prepared, but I also think that we need to think about the continuum of housing and how this affects our economy in other ways. One thing that if you look at the literature on affordable housing, if you don't have a good affordable housing stock, you have increases in other things like houselessness. So this is all a part of the same continuum. And so I just want to thank you all for this very reasonable update to the code that addresses a very important part of the housing stock there are pieces of it that I think members of the commission know that I would like to see go in the other direction in terms of minimum lot size, but I think this is a very good compromise and a step in the right direction. And I guess I just want to thank you for this work, and it gives me hope to see you all take this step that we can together work to address this housing crisis and continue to make the Dalles the welcoming place that it's always been. I will also say in closing that I love that the staff report and slideshow had pictures in it of dwellings that are right here in my neighborhood. I live sort of on the first tier up on 10th and G, and I walk by some of those places, and I think that the dense housing stock in the Dalles is some of the most beautiful stock that has like different eras of history around it. And it is, if anyone ever wants to go on a walking tour with me, I will point out all of them to you. So thank you in closing.
All right, thank you, Nate. Okay, and I'll remind the commissioners, as folks present testimony and ask questions, you're able to ask questions of the persons providing testimony as well. So if you do have any questions that come up, feel free to ask. But I do see Mario with his hand up next. And yeah, it looks like everyone's following suit. If folks want to put their hands up, it looks like it's going in order of people putting their hands up. So Mario, if you'd please state your name and address for the record, we'd love to hear from you. And remember to unmute yourself.
Hey, Brent, thank you. Hi, council members. I just wanted to give my 2 cents here. My name is Mario Heredia, and my address is 1014th West 14th Street in the Dalles. So I'm here on behalf of Columbia Cascade Housing Corporation, and I just wanted to say that we believe that all Oregonians obviously need a safe, stable, and affordable place to call home. I think today we simply don't have enough affordable and available homes for people across a range of incomes. Vacancy rates have dropped in communities across Oregon. People are struggling with homelessness, housing instability, rent burdens, and to make ends meet and put food on the table. There is a mismatch, I believe, between the types of homes available, the people who need a place to live, and the incomes that people earn. The Dalles changes in zoning regulations and comprehensive plan to match House Bill 2001 seek to increase housing options in our community and will allow for a wider range of needing housing options. We know that providing smaller housing types may also provide more affordable options for people in our communities, carpenters, EMTs, teachers starting their careers, and others who today struggle to find a place they can afford to rent or buy. We also know that increasing supply has a long-term positive impact on housing instability, particularly if newer homes being built are for more moderate incomes. In order to accommodate our growing community, we need more and different housing options for people. We need more homes of all sizes, accessory dwelling units, single-family homes, duplexes, townhomes, condos, and high-rise apartments in city centers. I appreciate your guys' time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mario. Were there any commissioners that had questions? Okay, we'll move next on the list. Looks like Josette's iPad. Please state your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is actually Michelle Onslinger, and I'm at 2012 East 14th Street. And I just had some questions. I took some notes on, I think his name was Andy, the gentleman that did the PowerPoint presentation, the slides. I was curious to know, so you guys mentioned the survey and the open house, and there were 462 people that visited that. Was that correct?
So yeah, we'll let Matt answer that. Matt was the one.
Matt, sorry, not Andy, Matt, sorry.
It was either 452 or 462 who visited it. Yeah.
Okay. Do we know how many of those surveys, the numbers that you gave, there was like 39 surveys that were completed, and was that the total number of surveys that were completed?
So the surveys, people could answer as many of the questions or as few of the questions as they wanted. So there were like little mini surveys, almost like embedded within the
So he
open.
doesn't know.
Okay, so was there, and I took the survey, but I don't recall, was there a question on there, how many of those people that took that survey were actual property owners in the Dalles?
I do not remember if we asked that question. Brandon is with our
There
firm.
was that supplementary optional section, survey section at the end, but we didn't have anybody fill that out. So I'm thinking people may have just missed it.
Yeah, because I don't recall that. But either way, I'm curious because I know where you guys, you seem to think that's very positive, the changes, but 30, like even 400, if we take every person that visited the site and say that of our population of our city, that's like 8%. So I just don't really know how we can base anything on those stats right there. Like that's not, so that was just a concern that I had as a landowner in the Dalles, and I've grown up in the Dalles. I am concerned about reducing a lot of these numbers because I think that it will change our town. I'm not against housing. I think that housing is needed, but I think there's a right way to do it. And my concern is that when we start reducing lot size requirements like that, it feels like anybody could just pop a unit in their backyard. And then all of a sudden we have lost our rural aspect of being in the Dalles. I think that there's a better way to do it where you can find areas to make it where it can be compatible with the neighborhood and where it can be safe and for the infrastructure. And I will give an example in that I actually grew up on 10th Street, on East 10th Street between Thompson and Morton. And it has been zoned high density for about 20 years, but nothing has ever been done here because the infrastructure has not been placed because it would not be safe. There's not room on the streets. There's not rooms with the house setbacks. You can't really put sidewalks in safely. And my concern is that if we are able to put up duplexes, small homes, anything in our neighbors' backyards, essentially, if they have some property, that's just going to magnify that problem because you have to have access for your emergency services. You have to have access for cars, which brings me to another point. You guys talked about parking spaces. And my concern of reducing it to one space per unit is that we're trying to make these for families. If I recall, that's kind of the goal for it. And I don't know many families that only have one car. So where are those cars going to park? Well, then they're going to have to park on the street. Well, what's that going to do? That's going to take away visibility. That's going to take away room for the other houses that are already there. So I understand what we're trying to do, but I feel like we need to have better regulations. We need to look at our density again because it just doesn't feel like we are really laying the plan to make this successful for housing. And then another question, Mr. Stice brought up that we need to have affordable housing. And I was wondering if there's a plan to make sure that these homes are affordable, because I know with one development that's trying to come in, the builder would never say what he was going to actually sell the houses for and build them for. And so if we want to make, how are we going to ensure that it can be affordable to people and that we're not going to just come back in and the new builders are going to say, great, well, we're still going to have $2,000 a month for rent for a 1-bedroom apartment. So is there a plan in place for that, for a regulation on what I guess I don't know what the term would be for that, but I don't know if anybody can answer any of those questions. Sorry, I threw a lot at you guys. Okay.
No, that's okay. And you actually made it like 10 seconds away from your 5-minute time limit. So good job. I want to make sure I got it right. First question was pricing of new housing coming in. Second question was parking, correct?
My question was parking. Yeah, pricing of because again, everybody says, well, we need to have affordable housing. Well, so you can build all the houses you want, but we don't know what anything is. Is there some sort of regulation that's going to keep it affordable? I guess is the thought, because if we are just letting people build houses everywhere, it doesn't necessarily, it just means that then we may have a ton of high rent places.
Not a very attractive place.
Yeah. So the main overall question is the new housing coming in, what would there be a control factor on the pricing of that housing?
Yeah, and how are we going to make it so that it stays compatible with our town? Because we are the Dalles, we are a rural community. I believe that people live here because they don't want to live in the city. They don't want to live urban in Portland. I know I don't want to. I don't want to live where there's a ton of people. Like, I like to be able to be in my yard and not be in somebody else's at the same time, essentially. So how are we going to keep that compatible if we're reducing all the size for our clearance? If and these lot sizes are like, for the medium density, we're reducing the lot size by half, if I read that right, to be able to have to put a duplex on there. And so those are my concerns, that it's going to be, again, we're just going to have a bunch of houses crammed in here, because now we have allowed people from outside also who don't live here, we have no reason for them to not come and build those and say, well, it doesn't matter if we're crammed in at all.
Okay. And so, folks, just a reminder, if you're not providing testimony, please mute yourself or keep your phone speaker away from your mouth. I'm gonna throw that up to Matt to maybe answer some of those questions, because I know that a lot of the updates that we're going through are state mandated, and it's stuff that is kind of out of our control. But there are portions that you brought up, such as parking size, that we are addressing through these updates. So do you want to touch on that at all, Matt?
I'll very briefly comment on some of these things and then allow you to kind of move on with the other folks who want to provide testimony. So there are not any proposals to regulate what somebody could sell a duplex or a triplex or a quadplex at. So that's not something really the city can do, in large part, just like they couldn't require you to sell or rent your home at a certain point. So that is not being proposed. I will say that on average, the cost of building and then selling or renting these forms of housing, kind of all of them, are lower per unit than for a single family detached home. So on average, these do provide a lower cost option in terms of housing in the Dalles, and then increasing the supply of housing overall over time tends to reduce the cost of housing within a community. So really the kind of the overall intent of the legislation and some of these requirements or recommendations is to provide additional options for folks. I think if you were watching the presentation, you saw pictures of a number of these same types of units that are on the ground in the Dalles. So these aren't things that are particularly new to the Dalles. They're already there. They've been built over time. And the proposed amendments for duplexes, for the most part, are required by state law. And again, the requirements associated with lot size for triplexes and quadplexes would just put them on kind of the same footing as other forms of housing in the same zones. So in terms of what's allowed and what people could do with their property. The last thing I would say is just that this is really going to help to the increase in these forms of housing is not expected to be dramatic or drastic, and it's expected to happen over time pretty gradually. In no city in the state of Oregon is there an expectation that all of a sudden there's going to be a huge number of triplexes or quadplexes built. There will be a small percentage of them likely built over time in any given area or city. So it's not expected to lead to sort of drastic change. There's been a fair number of financial analyses of that, and that's what those tend to show. But it would provide some more options for people. The last thing I'll just note is that we did an earlier survey in the process and just kind of asked people about their general support for these types of housing, and pretty strong support for allowing these forms of housing throughout the Dalles. And we did ask there about whether or not people lived or owned property in the Dalles, and the vast majority of the people that responded to the survey do live, or for that one did live and own or rent property in the Dalles, because not everybody owns property. Some of them are renters. but residents of the Dalles too, and need housing in the Dalles. So those are kind of how I would respond to those questions.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
And
Can I just ask one more question? When he said recommendations, and you might have, and Dawn might have answered this earlier, but she was cutting out. So with these changes with lot size and density, it wouldn't be, it's basically an opportunity and not a mandate, right? So like for example, I have a house that I would like to build on a property, but I can still build a single house, a single dwelling there, even though my density maybe isn't a high density. I wouldn't be mandated to put multiple units on there, would I?
None of this requires anybody to build anything. It's all about allowing for options. It doesn't
an option.
Anybody to build a duplex or a townhome or a triplex.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, and
so Shelley, just sorry.
Hey, Dawn, sorry.
Sure,
I
baby.
was going to say, Shelley, if you want to, if you have any further questions, feel free to submit those to staff, and we can they can help you out with those questions. And if there are any concerns, we can hopefully address them as well. But I do want to afford some time for other folks because we have kind of gotten a little far.
So you're saying that's the longest 5 minutes? Just kidding.
I appreciate your testimony tonight. It was really thoughtful, and there was a lot of meaning behind it. So I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
But we'll move on. I see Maria Pena, correct? I see her hand up next. So if you want to state your name and address for the record, we'll get some testimony from you as well.
Yeah, my name is
I'm sorry, Maureen. I was going to say, anyone that's on the phone, I'll promise I'll get to you as well. I'm just getting hands up on the screen. So I promise I'll allow time for you folks as well. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Maria Pena, and my address is 1600 West 10th here in the Dalles. And I was just going to echo what Shelley said. I think I do have also concerns about what she stated, but I also, I understand that, you know, we're not going to have a lot of little houses popping up every here and there, but I'm also concerned about, you know, if we have housing that is not going to be affordable for our community members and, you know, people that work in the orchards or work in McDonald's or work in those kind of places, we're going to have people coming up from even close to the river. I mean, some people travel to Portland. What if people come all the way here and, you know, to rent because it's cheaper? And I just would not like to lose the feeling of community and have people not living here that don't really appreciate what we have here as a community and, you know, just having a house here because it's cheaper. I understand what, you know, that this is going to be opportunity for, you know, more sustainability and to have more housing. But like she said, we need to be really careful how, you know, the planning and how do you do things, because we just don't want to create a place where, because it's cheaper, you know, anybody can just not build here, but then come and rent here, because, you know, I know the people that live in Hood River come and rent here because it's cheaper. I just have a few concerns for our community, and you know, I work with a lot of Latino community, and they struggle, and you know, there's families living together because that's the only way they can afford housing, and I just would not like to see that you know, you'll be creating these places where people are not even going to afford to, you know, to live here, the people that already live here. So that was it. I'm sorry. I was just, yeah, I have a few concerns as well.
That's okay. I appreciate your testimony, and I'm gonna see if the commissioners have any questions for you. Okay, I'm not hearing anyone speak up, so I appreciate your testimony. Is there anyone else that I don't see anyone else's hands up, so I'll move on to the folks that are on the phone. If you would like to provide testimony, feel free to speak up, state your name and address for the record. I'm not hearing anyone jump up. Is there anyone that wishes to provide testimony at all? at this time. If you do, if you're on video even, feel free to speak up, state your name and address for the record.
Hey, Brent. Sorry, this is Josette's iPad again. Josette would actually like to speak this time, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yep, just state your name and address for the record, please.
Again, okay, this is Josette Schultens, 2637 East 10th Street. I had a couple of questions. I was trying to put them in order. Okay, on the paper that we received in the mail, it said you had the land use regulations that may affect the permissible use of your property and other properties, and then it says may affect the value of our properties. I'm assuming you mean you're not trying to devalue our properties by doing this, and I don't know how it make them more valuable, but and the reason I'm asking you that is there's a home next to us that was bought by a woman and her husband from Portland. And she told me at the time when I met her that they were thinking of retiring and moving over here. Well, they since rented it. And just a week or so ago, there was a gentleman out measuring the easement between our homes. And my husband was talking to him and asked him if he was the owner, because we knew the people there weren't. And he said, yes, I am. And I said, well, what are you doing? And he was measuring that because he's planning possibly on putting a house down below there. They thought maybe they might retire and live down there below, which it doesn't have a view. So I don't know why he'd give up the one up above to be in the one below, but I'm talking about, mostly I'm concerned about that there's no privacy there, that he's going to try to put a driveway that goes down between, and it's fairly steep to get down to this house, would run on the easement between our homes. And I guess I have more questions too. I'd like to know the Hanlon Development and the Cascade Corporation. Are these people who are vested here in the Dalles, other than just coming in and developing and then just leaving it like that? As the young man who's trying to do the development up above us, he talks about our community, but he doesn't live here and has no intention of living here. And when we're talking about putting 70 houses or dwelling units on a little over 6 acres, which you guys are tired of hearing about this, I'm sure. But that doesn't sound like a particularly livable situation that's going to enhance anybody's property value around here. And as I understood in this, that the government or the state, that the governor, the regulations that were passed were to allow our city to do this, to do it like that. Are they allowing us to do it if we want to, or are they mandating that we have to do it? Those are some questions. I've got others, but I'll try not to do all of those things.
Okay, and we'll try to address this. So I'm gonna go to Alice regarding the language in the notice, the portion that talks about whether it would affect property value or uses on the property.
Okay,
I'm
can
gonna
I
let her detail that a little bit.
Okay, I'm sorry. I wanted to give you one more comment that this gentleman said to us, is he was going to try to ram this through before you got everything settled. I just wanted to let you know that that was going on here as well.
So
thank you.
Yeah, no worries. I'm going to let Alice go ahead and cover that first part real quick.
Chair, thank you for the question. State law, there was a ballot measure that was passed in around 2000 that requires planning departments and jurisdictions like ourselves to include this language in our notices. And so it's required that we provide it. As to whether it will impact property values, we don't do an analysis on that, but we're required to include the language as is written or as was included on this notice. So it's just a requirement. And what I like about the language is that it puts people on notice and they pay attention. What I don't like about it is it may unnecessarily scare people. And so I have mixed feelings about being required to put that language on there. But I think for the most part, I'm in favor of it because I like you, it's important that people pay attention and get involved in changes to land use code that will affect their properties. So that's one question. You asked another question, if I may, Chair Bybee, about whether we are being allowed to do this or mandated to do this. There are parts of this that we are being mandated to make the changes, and that is particularly relating to making sure that existing single-family lots can accommodate or do accommodate duplexes. So we have to allow duplexes on all existing lots that allow single-family homes. So that's the case. And I think, I don't know if it was you or a previous speaker who said that we were reducing property.
Are we talking about that?
Reducing lot sizes. Lot sizes are actually in 3 different cases. We're increasing minimum lot sizes to make sure that the character is retained in the Dalles and that duplexes can actually fit on the lots, because those lot sizes were reduced in the last couple of years and we wanted to bump those up again. So I just wanted to make that comment. And you did talk about people being from out of town. You talked about Hanlon Development. She can speak for herself, but Mary lives here in the Dalles and she has a vested interest in the Dalles. I know that, and maybe the other person you spoke about too. I'm not exactly sure, but most of the folks who've been speaking here live here in the Dalles or work here.
Chair Bybee, I'd be happy to comment if it's appropriate. This is Mary Hanlon.
Chair Bybee, you're muted.
Sorry. Okay. Mary, if you want to hold on one second. Josette, I hope we covered that. I just wanted to say for the specific case that you're talking about with your neighbor, it would most likely be appropriate to contact staff about that outside the meeting. And you could most likely discuss that with them and figure out the specifics, whether or not the project that your neighbor is planning is feasible or not. But I hope that we addressed your concerns on a larger, the other concerns adequately. And if you do have any other concerns, feel free to send those to staff as well for consideration.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Bybee?
Yep. Philip?
Would it be okay for me to make a couple comments just for context?
Okay, so I had, is it in regards to Josette's testimony?
Yes, it's in regards to a couple of the testimonies that have been given.
Okay. Yep. Is that Paula?
Yes.
Okay.
Mary Hanlon had asked if she could respond to Ms. Schulten's.
Right, and I was about to get to her. I realized I was muted when I answered her. Mary, I promise we'll get to you next, since Philip's going to address the last couple of bits of testimony. I promise I'll get to you after Philip.
Thank you.
Yep.
This is the guy.
I'll keep it short.
Becky didn't like him either. Not this guy. That's Brent.
If you could please mute yourself unless you're providing testimony. Go ahead, Philip.
I just wanted to give 2 pointers to discussions that have been prevalent in looking at these changes throughout the last few meetings. And one is the fact that we are in a unique situation in having a pretty much non-negotiable urban growth boundary. So the city of the Dalles can't grow outwards. At the same time, we know that there is plenty of space to develop higher density inwards. So really our only option to grow population and activity within the city is within the city limits. And that's why we're looking very closely and using these needed changes to increase density within the city. And as Matt alluded to earlier, that does have a statistical tendency to decrease real estate prices per unit. That was the one point I wanted to make. That's really important. The other point in terms of parking and car traffic, the Dalles is a town that is very car focused and not very friendly towards multimode transportation, meaning bicycling and walking. And that is something that we have talked a lot about, wanting to make the Dalles friendlier to pedestrian and bicycle traffic. Of course, that has all kinds of beneficial effects on citizens' health, ability to move around without creating more congestion, and etc. So that's been a point that's come up repeatedly when talking about decreasing the amount of required parking. You can still provide as much parking as you want, but decreasing the amount of required parking so that we can become a city that is not entirely focused just on car traffic. I would just wanted to provide those two pieces of context from our many discussions about these matters. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Philip. All right, we're gonna move to Mary Hanlon next. So please state your name and address for the record.
Mary Hanlon, 315 East 10th Street. And I wanted to respond, Josette, mostly because you kind of called out my comments, and I appreciate that. And I just wanted to say that I do live in the Dalles, and I've lived here for 5 years. And I also, I have been working on housing, both affordable housing and elderly housing and market rate housing since the late 1980s in advocacy and nonprofits, and since for the last 15 years in market rate housing. And in communities like the Dalles, market rate housing is generally equal to what's considered affordable housing. And what I would also say is that for several years when I lived here, I watched how I was born in Oregon, and I have lived in other places as well. But when I've watched what was going on in the Dalles, I was trying to figure out if it was possible to build housing. And I have never done housing that is kind of taking over greenfields and building a lot of housing. I've instead focused on areas that have been kind of neglected or had seen a heyday at an earlier time. And so my personal and business focus is more in something like building apartments downtown, where there is, kind of where it would be better, and it would revitalize the downtown, and it would create energy, and it would create a livelihood. And I chose to live in the Dalles and not Hood River because I prefer the character of the Dalles. So, trying to do something that would really integrate with that. And I would say that the reason why I 3 years ago, chose a lot downtown that would support that, but we haven't been able to build it. And the reason why we can't build housing, apartments that would be suitable for, working families is because the cost of construction is so high. So it's very different than the issues that you're talking about in relationship to your neighbor and the lots and the regulations. But I think what you're talking about there, and they'll address it with the city, is that's what's allowed on that lot. So yes, that can be unattractive if your neighborhood becomes more dense. But what I think is really good about the amendments they're considering tonight is that if you wanted to, you could build a dwelling unit on your lot that would increase, housing, and you could decide if it's affordable or not, if you're building that. So I hope that answers your questions about my commitment to the Dalles.
Okay, thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Mary.
Okay, let's keep it going. Is there any other folks that wish to provide testimony? And if you do, please remember to unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record. And don't be shy. Well, I'm not hearing anyone jump up. So,
looks like Mario's hand is up.
Oh, I didn't see that. Okay. Yes, Mario.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to respond and comment on, I think it was Jolene, or I can't remember her name. I apologize, but I just wanted to give just a brief introduction, or just kind of a summary of who we are, Community Cascade Housing. So we started in 1991, around 1991, and we provide we're the public housing here in the Gorge, so we provide quite a bit of assistance to the community. One of them is foreclosure prevention with the state of Oregon, and that started 2012, and I believe since it began as of now, we've gave out about close to $800,000 in assistance to the local community here, and so they could stay in their homes. And that money came from the lawsuit in 2009 against the 5 major banks, which were like Wells Fargo, Chase, Bank of America, etc. So that's one of the areas we do here. And then the other one's home repair. We also provide a home repair program where we help the local community here in Washoe County do repairs that are related to health or safety. So if their roof's falling off, or they need new plumbing, electrical, we do offer grants and loans, which allow them to live more comfortably in their home. So we're pretty well invested here in the community. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other folks that would like to provide testimony? If you do, please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record. If not, after this, I'm going to ask if the commissioners have enough information to make a decision. So this is your last call if you would like to provide testimony.
Hi, Brent. Can I say something?
Yes. Yeah. Please state your name and address.
Okay, Mary Beth, and I don't live in town. I live out on Sandlin Road, 3265 Sandlin.
Okay.
But I heard
Excuse me,
Shelley.
Ivy?
Yes.
Is Beth her last name, or does Mary Beth have a last name?
I do have a last name. It's Richmond.
Okay.
May I have your address again?
3265 Sandlin Road.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mary. We just have to make that part of the record.
Okay, sorry. So I think it was a comment that Shelley made, or maybe it was a question about whether there would be a requirement to build a duplex or a triplex. And so from my understanding of what's in the code, I think she needs some clarification, because, and you guys will know if I'm correct, there is a code that if a lot is in either the medium density or high density, and it is a certain size, then you would be required to do a duplex or a triplex.
No.
No.
Nope. No, these are strictly options.
So Chair Bybee, I can go ahead and add into that. So the amendments that are before the commission tonight do not talk about or are not for increasing a density requirement. We have had a density requirement in our code since 2011, I believe. And what Mary Beth and then what Shelley Onslinger was stating earlier is it's based, if you are in an RM zone, so you are correct, Mary Beth, if you are in an RM zone or RH zone and you have a large lot that's, let's say, over 8,000 square feet, Our code currently requires that 2 dwelling structures be added to that to meet that minimum density requirement. So these code amendments that are here tonight are not going to be increasing that density requirement. They're going to be aligning our current land use code and our comp plan to make sure that those densities do match, but there's no changes in increasing that density requirement. So that's already something that's in play. That is not one of the code amendments that will be happening here tonight. And Matt, you can jump in if I have anything more on that.
And I assume that means if somebody wants to develop a lot in one of those zones, they have to meet a minimum density requirement. It doesn't mean they have to go out and build a duplex or a triplex or whatever. It means if they want to develop a particular lot in an area with a minimum density requirement, they have to develop a certain number of units per a certain size lot. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And as you said, we're not proposing,
which may warrant a subdivision or partition.
yeah,
correct.
But we're not at this point proposing any changes to any of that. None of what's being proposed tonight affects those requirements.
And if someone wanted to just
Correct.
build a single family dwelling on it, they have that option as well, right?
If the lot is not, let's say for high density, if the lot is over 8,000 square feet and they want to build a single family home in the high density zone, we would not be able to approve that. So they would either have to do a partition or they would have to come in for 2 dwelling units for that parcel. Okay. So it's a minimum density requirement, but that's not what we're changing today. That's already code that's in play and has been since 2011.
Right. I was going to say, we haven't addressed that at all through any of this.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Okay, does that answer your question, Mary?
It does. I just, I thought that maybe Shelley would misunderstand because her question sounded like, there is no requirement for duplexes on larger lots, but there is if you're in a certain zone for density.
Yeah.
But yes, I did know that was already on the books. I just was hoping that would be clear for everybody to know that is a requirement if the lot is a certain size in the higher density zones.
Right. Yeah, it's something that's already in effect. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary
Okay.
Beth.
I have a question for you. If you have a
Here, sorry, can you? state
sorry,
your
I'm
name
sorry.
and address?
This is Josette Schultens again, 2637 East 10th. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I have a question for you. Okay, you have a lot here. There's a house on it, an existing house on it. If you want to come in and remodel this house, remodel the house, are you saying you're going to require can't do that they have to build a duplex behind or add to that one to make it a duplex?
If it's over 8,000.
If it's over 8,000 square feet.
And it's in a high density area.
And it's in the high density area.
So a remodel, no. So if you have a vacant piece of land that is over 8,000 square feet in the high density zone and you want to put a single family home, we will then tell you we cannot approve a single family home for that large of a lot. And then you'd either have to partition it down or you would have to build multiple dwelling structures on that lot to meet our minimum density requirements. So a remodel would not trigger that. It would be, so anybody, right?
But you're saying, Dawn, tonight that the changes that are proposed for the lot sizes for duplexes and all the plexes does not change that require, even though now you could possibly put more in an area, it doesn't change the density requirement for that.
We are not changing, we're not increasing densities with these requests. So the state is mandating that we require or we allow for duplexes to be on any residentially zoned. So in a sense, you could look at the low density being an increase in density because a duplex is now allowed where prior a single family home. So I get it's kind Yes, for low density. Medium and high density, those uses are already permitted. And what Alice, our director, had stated earlier, our zoning minimum lot sizes, we're actually increasing those minimum lot sizes in the medium and high density to be a little bit larger to accommodate the footprints that are associated with duplexes and triplexes. So we're actually increasing sizes in those two higher density residential zones. And then we have the addition. So there is a slight density change for the low density because we do have to require, or we do have to allow for duplexes. But in the other two zones that we already have the density, we're not making changes to a density requirement. Those are in place.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay.
You bet.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Gisette. This is the last call for anyone that wants to provide testimony. Again, please state your name and address for the record if you do. Okay, I am not hearing anything, so I'm going to ask, do the commissioners feel they have enough information to make a decision? And I'm going to go one by one as I see them on the screen. So, Alan.
Yes.
Okay, and Carly.
Yes.
And Cody.
Yes, I do.
Okay, and Philip.
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay, and Mark.
Yes.
Okay, and Linda.
I may not like it, but yes, I do.
Okay. Let's see. I think that, did I get everyone? If I missed someone, you can smack me the next time you see me. Okay. All right. So the public hearing on this matter is now closed. It's time for the commissioners' deliberations on this matter to take place. So do the commissioners want to have any discussions regarding testimony tonight, and also thoughts moving forward? Remember that if we do make any edits, we need to have motions and votes on any changes to what we are making a decision on tonight. Preferably make that beforehand instead of in the middle of a motion to approve it or deny it. So I'm going to open up the floor and let conversations start. So are there any commissioners that want to chat about anything that's been presented?
I'll hop in. Okay. I just want to thank everyone for their testimony and providing the information. I especially want to thank the staff and Matt and Brendan for guiding us through this process. This has been really complex. This has been going on for months. I just want to thank you guys for all this work. None of this is easy, and I know that the character of our community is really important. But I also want to keep in mind that I want people to be able to live here. So I just think that this process is not ideal, but it's also the best that we can do within the limited domain that the codes can really enforce. Hopefully we can incentivize some folks to do some developments. There's other parts of the building process that need to be addressed. First and foremost, the cost of building in general, but then also maybe some other aspects of building that need to be addressed, but this is the first step. I do also want to thank the staff for holding us back on the commercial district and zone 2. That was the right decision. We got a little bit ahead of ourselves. So I just want to thank you guys for really being thoughtful and deliberative about this process. So that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, Carly. Is there any other commissioner that would like to provide comment?
Miller wants to make a comment.
Okay.
Affordable housing, I think that's a misnomer. I don't think that there is affordable housing for like the barista or the McDonald's worker or some of the blue collar workers. I have recently know of a house that was built in the early 1900s and 600 square feet, and it sold for over 200,000. There's not a whole lot of people that can afford 200,000. And the rent, Mr. Stice made a comment about $1,500 for a one bedroom. It's a sign of our times. It's just the housing market nowadays. It's eliminating a lot of homeowners. And as far as building right now, the cost is prohibitive. And it's not getting any better. The building materials, the costs are going up. And I think we're going to be stuck for a while. But I do concur with what we're voting on tonight. Some of the ordinances that are already in place, I'm not so fond of, but we've got to go on. I'll get off my soapbox now.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Miller. Are there any other commissioners that would like to provide comment? It looks like Alan, you raised your hand.
Yeah, I'm in favor of most of these proposed amendments. I stated previously that I didn't necessarily agree with the parking amendments for the triplexes and quadplexes. I felt like we needed more parking, but I also realized that these are just the minimum requirements and that developers can choose to do more parking, and I think they will if there's a parking problem. So I'm on board with what we're doing here.
All right, thank you. Any other commissioners? Okay, I'm not hearing anyone else. I'll provide my input. I'm a huge fan of options for folks to choose from. Kind of what Alan touched on. These are minimums, they're not requirements. And folks have the option of implementing these choices if they want to, and if they don't want to, they don't have to. I'm a huge fan of that, and I do believe that this is going to be a slow, gradual change into the future. Kind of what Commissioner Miller touched on too, the price of lumber has tripled. It's absolutely insane right now, and I don't think there's going to be a large boom of new housing happening anytime soon. But I do think these changes are going to take place over time, but I'm in support of it as well. I coming into this community as a just fresh out of college, looking to start my career, it was very, very, very difficult to find a rental home, let alone that I could afford on a beginning salary out of college. And even finding a home was absolute luck. I don't envy anyone looking for a home in this market right now. It's absolutely insane. And I hope going into the future, some of these issues can get addressed. I know they all can't get addressed with what we're considering tonight. Hopefully at some point in the future we can, though. And I'll leave it there. Are there any other commissioners that want to provide comment before we move forward? Mark, does your cat want to provide comment?
No, I guess I kind of, feel the same way as Commissioner Miller. I'm not real excited about some of these provisions, but I guess it's the best we can do under the circumstances. I don't think it's going to automatically provide affordable housing. I think groups like Columbia Cascade Housing are going to have to get more funding to provide subsidized housing for us to make any real dent in the housing shortage for working people. Simply increasing the density by itself isn't going to really do much.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mark. Okay. So, are there any motions on the floor that the commissioners would like to make?
Okay, to put forth the motion to approve the amendments as stated.
I'll second that.
Okay, so it was moved by Philip and seconded by Mark.
Excuse me, Chair Bybee?
Yes?
The staff recommendation is on page 13 of the amended staff report. And if you could read, or if someone could read that into the record, I'd be most grateful.
Okay, I will read that. 1 second, let me get there. Sorry, folks, for the delay. Just 1 second.
I have it if you want me to read it.
Sure, go ahead, Commissioner Miller.
Okay, staff recommends the Planning Commission move to recommend to the City Council the approval of zoning ordinance amendment number 104-21 and comprehensive plan amendment number 49-21, adopting the code amendments attached herein and adopting findings included in this staff report with any additional changes from the commission at the May 20th, 2021 hearing.
Okay, does that work for you, Paula?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So Chair Bybee, I do have one comment. If there are no amendments, we can take out that last section, but we also do need to include it in the amended staff report due to the second staff report coming out.
Right. Okay. Okay. So are we ready to vote on that? I think for clarity, what I'm going to do is go one by one, just so that we can get it on the record. So when I call on you, just say either in favor or not in favor.
Chair Bybee?
Yes?
I may have missed it. Did I hear a second for that motion?
Yes, it was moved by Philip and seconded by Mark.
Was it moved by Philip? I thought it was moved by Commissioner Miller.
No, it was moved by me.
My mistake. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So I'll go through one by one, either say in favor or not in favor. So we'll start with Alan.
Favor.
In favor?
Yes.
Okay. And Carly?
In favor.
Okay. And Cody?
In favor.
Okay. And Philip?
In favor.
Okay. And Commissioner Miller?
In favor.
Okay. And Mark?
In favor.
Okay. And I vote in favor as well. So it is unanimous. Okay. Okay, so we will move into the next portion of the hearing. Sorry, let me get into my agenda. So resolution, this is a resolution of PC 597-21, a resolution of the Planning Commission recommending City Council approval of various amendments to the Dallas Municipal Code, Title 10, Land Use and Development, and the Comprehensive Plan. So this is pretty much a resolution to what we just voted on. Are there any motions on the table for this? I'll motion if I have to. I'll motion to approve the resolution, PC 597-21, as stated in the agenda.
I'll second that.
I'll second it.
Sorry, Mark. Philip beat you to it.
Oh, okay.
All right. So I moved it. It was seconded by Philip. All those in favor either say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And it was unanimous as well. Okay. Well, that is the end. We'll adjourn the hearing now. Thank you, folks, for attending. For the members of the public as well that joined us, I appreciate all of y'all's testimony and input. Again, if you have some specific questions, feel free to send those to staff. If you have any additional comments or concerns, send those to staff as well. So, all right, folks, everyone take care and have a good rest of the night.
Thank you, everybody.
Night.
Good night.
Bye.